Hi, this is Magda from wnetrzazewnetrza. In this episode, we'll talk about furniture restoration, about repainting furniture, more specifically. However, this won't be a professional step-by-step guide from scratch, like what you need to prepare, which paint to choose, or when to do what. Because honestly, this topic is so broad that, first of all, it probably wouldn't fit into one episode, and secondly, I took a long time to get to it precisely because I wanted to do it really professionally. And eventually I noticed, talking to you privately, on different chats, or giving advice to friends, that actually such a detailed and specialized guide isn't really necessary. And if someone would like to approach it in a broader way, such guides already exist. And I can recommend two books to you, Meble od Noa and Tapiceruj, which are from the same series and have been really nicely put together. Inside, there are a lot of clever tricks that will be useful even for experienced people, and for beginners, there'll be a nice step-by-step introduction. What tools, what paint, how to approach a given topic. Of course, you can find both books in our store wnetrzazewnetrzaofficial. But I'll tell you about my furniture, how I repainted it, what paints I used, and how it all works out. Because the truth is, almost any paint will work for furniture. You'll just get different results and different durability. And you can repaint any piece of furniture, even the slippery ones, even those with veneer, and you don't even have to sand them. Sometimes people say you can't do that, that's not how things are done. Well, that's true if you want to do it professionally. But if we have an old piece of furniture that we don't really need anymore, it's better to give it a second life than to just throw it away. Although, of course, the best thing is simply to. If we don't want to give it a second life ourselves, then give it to someone else so they can give it a second life. However, repainting is honestly the simplest way, and if you follow different girls who do amazing makeovers and show them on blogs or Instagram, they often mention which paints they use, and sometimes these are definitely not paints dedicated for furniture. And it works just like it did for me. I'm not alone in this. Seriously? On one hand, it's worth doing things properly, but on the other hand, life is life. There's not always time for everything, and there's not always money for everything. And then it's good to know that there are other ways too. My favorite piece of furniture at home is this wardrobe that I got from the Warsaw University of Technology. Imagine that the Faculty of Electronics was getting rid of old furniture before a renovation, and instead of paying a company to take away the old furniture, they posted an online ad saying you could take it, and I managed to snag just such a shelf. So big respect to the Faculty of Electronics as well, for someone there realizing that you can simply give away the furniture instead of paying for its disposal. And this cabinet was simply wooden, it had a wooden veneer, and overall it was in pretty good condition, but it had some chips, so I used wood filler. It didn't have handles, and there was no key either, so I had to add handles here. I just had to drill through the doors and attach them with a screw. You know how handles are? However, the glass panes are new from the glazier, and I repainted everything else with chalk paint. Annice Lone Chalk paint is water soluble, which has the advantage that if it sits for a while and dries out a bit, you can probably still dissolve it a little and use it. If after a few years there is some damage and we want to fix something, it's probably not recommended and it probably has some worse properties. But I'm just telling you how it is. In case of an emergency, this ability to dissolve in water comes in handy. However, if we paint a piece of furniture with water-soluble paint and then spill water on it, there will be marks and it won't look nice. So that's why you need to protect such furniture. And here I used wax for this. You can even feel it a little to the touch, but wax is not my favorite finishing method. At the time, it seemed okay to me, and overall it's fine, but I'm not a fan of wax, so now I prefer to use varnish, especially since there is matte varnish, which gives a nice effect. Chalk paints have the advantage of very good adhesion, and they actually work quite well. Without excessive preparation of the surface, we can simply wash the furniture, and we don't have to do anything special like sanding or scraping to improve the adhesion. This dresser is a popular model from IKEA. I don't remember the name right now, but it's one of the cheapest ones, made of pine, which is a great material for makeovers. Do-it-yourself projects. On the internet, you'll find plenty of ideas, including combining several of these dressers into a larger piece of furniture or adding legs. A whole lot of different ideas. I was only planning to repaint it and replace the handles. I wanted them to be gold, just like on the blue wardrobe, but after repainting, I decided that these wooden handles look great here, so I left them as they were. Painting furniture made of raw wood like this is the greatest pleasure. Wood absorbs paint beautifully. You can see the results right away. The paint holds well. It's very satisfying, and you just need to buy regular wood paint. I bought Tikurila paint here. I think it's Tikurila Aqua. Well, I'm not sure, but anyway, just regular wood paint. A little shelf, a cheap makeover, and now I have a piece of furniture in the color I wanted, because I was missing a bit of red here in the living room. These chairs have been with me for several years now. I got 4 of them together with my ex-husband after our wedding from my father-in-law, who painted them red with wood paint. Śnieżka. It's amazing that after all these years I still remember such details, and that there were 4 red chairs. This is the popular Ivar model. I hope it's still available at IKEA because these chairs are really great. And the fact that you can paint them so easily in any color gives us huge possibilities. They're sturdy and durable. After many years, as you can see, they're still doing very well, and their construction is super stable. And wood is wood. And here, after so many years, and not just regular use, but also moving them around, then using them as technical chairs in the kids' rooms, they've really been through a lot and are a bit banged up, but when there's a scratch, the wood shows underneath and it still looks very classy. But this chair, I repainted it. Oh, when did I do that? About 2 years ago, I think, in green. When I was painting my daughter's room, the whole room changed its color scheme and the red chair just didn't fit in anymore. So before I bought a chair on wheels, which my daughter has now, I just decided to repaint one of these old chairs. And for that, attention, I used wall paint, the same one I used for the wall, and then I just painted the chair with furniture varnish. This way, the seat is protected. I painted several layers of that varnish. I don't remember if it was 2 or 3, but definitely more than 1. And now it's actually easy to clean. The downside is that when this green chair gets chipped, the red color underneath shows through. Here on the edges, you can see it a bit here at the top, although this looks scratched to me, which isn't surprising for a chair in a children's room. Still, it's holding up well after all this time. I assume this would be a temporary solution, but I think it will last for a few more good years. And maybe someday I'll decide to sand it down and paint it, this time properly with wood paint. This piece of furniture is the most surprising of all the furniture I've repainted myself and have at home, because to repaint this dresser, I used tile paint that I used in the kitchen. I had a little left over and thought this color would work great here, and it actually looks good, but the question is, how about adhesion? Because the assumption is that if the paint sticks to tiles, then it should also stick to veneer, since there was a birch veneer here. Tiles are slippery, and veneer is relatively slippery too, so it would seem like a similar situation, and actually, it kind of is. However, this paint has a bit of a rubbery texture, so since there's a swing next to it, when the kids were swinging, they picked at the dresser a little, and once they started, you could keep peeling the paint off. And here on the side, an unsightly paint hole appeared, which I just painted over one day, and since then there hasn't been any problem. I didn't protect this paint with any varnish, I just painted it with tile paint, and I did it 2 years ago. And for 2 years, I think it's in pretty good condition. Actually, if you take a closer look here on the corner, it's wearing off a little bit. However, I think that's just part of the natural wear of wood, and overall I would say the result is good. But it's not like I'm recommending you use tile paint. I definitely expect that furniture paints are better suited for furniture. But sometimes it happens that we have some old furniture that's just like that. One step away from getting rid of them, even one step away from throwing them out, instead of throwing them away, instead of getting rid of them. You can still try using paints, but you probably won't feel like sanding, because that could make your apartment dusty, and not everyone has a garden where they can do that kind of work. We don't really want to invest in some good paint for a table right now, especially when it's just, I don't know, an old little table. A piece of junk we want to get rid of, and which itself costs about 20 zlotys, so in that case it's nice to just use paint. We already have it and we can do a really budget-friendly makeover. And even though the paint is labeled for walls and we have a table, not a wall, it's likely that if we paint the table with it, it'll work too. It won't last. It probably won't be great for 10 years, but it'll be okay. So if you have this kind of furniture, it's worth daring to experiment. And if you'd like to do it properly, I recommend the book I've already mentioned, Furniture Anew, which you can find in our store at www.wnetrzazewnetrzaofficial. The furniture I showed you is, of course, only the ones I have in my apartment, and now I just remembered that actually, not even all of them. There's also a little shelf in the kitchen that I repainted with cast-in paint. And when it comes to my overall experience, I think the most spectacular transformation for me was the kitchen makeover. Repainting all the cabinets turned them from yellowed brownish ones into white and blue, white on top, blue on the bottom. It really looked super refreshing. It totally transformed the kitchen. So I recommend using paints both for painting tiles and for painting furniture, but not for painting floors. Although of course it also depends on where. For example, I showed you the staircase in the old villa where the wooden floor was repainted. There were also rugs there and it really looked nice, and the floor didn't get damaged so easily. However, obviously tiles are different and wood is different. So share your furniture makeovers in the comments. Have you ever repainted something or used paints in a way they weren't intended for? I'd love to read about your experiences, and of course I encourage you to subscribe to the channel to support the channel as well, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye!